This video is meant to help better explain the quarter scale. And to begin that, I'll start by using a regular tape measure. When we are sawmilling, all we do to begin, or all I do, is use a regular tape measure in order to square the log into a cant. So here I've used a regular tape measure to determine the height of my log, cut the first slab. Then we rotate the log on the sawmill, and then I cut my second slab. So keep in mind, this is just speaking in general. There are times when we may slab it differently, but in this case I'm just cutting 4 slabs to make a cant. I use my tape measure to measure the size, and this is my third cut now. And what I'm doing now is I'm finding the width of the log. So I use a tape measure to determine however wide this finished cant will be. Let's say it was 6 inches or 8 inches in diameter. Okay, now I have an 8-inch wide board. Okay, now my cant is 8 inches wide across this way. Okay, if that was my measurement, it would say it was 8 inches wide. Well, now when I start cutting, you'll see I'm cutting boards out of here. Well, if I cut my boards, the problem I'm going to run into now is I have to factor in the kerf. It didn't matter beforehand with the tape measure because I was just squaring it, but now every time I remove a board, I am also losing the kerf. Okay, so I'm losing 1/8 of an inch every time I make a 1-inch board using this tape measure. So in order to make all of these 1-inch boards, I'm actually having to cut 1 1/8 of an inch every time I cut the board. So if I use a regular tape measure, and if every time I cut a 1-inch board, I have to add 1/8 of an inch. That means my math is saying 1 1/8 for one cut, 2 1/4, 3 3/8, 4 1/2. Oh, you probably are getting lost right now, and you're getting a little confused, and it just slows you down. It's too much math. So the quarter scale, in this situation, once you have squared the log, and once you are ready to start cutting 1 board, 2 boards, 3 boards, and so on, then the quarter scale is your best friend because it becomes a gauge. It just shows you where to drop your cutting head to, and it takes out all of this math and adding the extra 1/8 of an inch for you. So the quarter scale is just a series of lines that allow you to predictably set the cutting head at the same size and give you a 1-inch board or whatever scale you use, and it factors in the 1/8 of an inch kerf each time. So it allows you to make a predictable board. Okay? Now they call it a quarter scale. And what they're doing is just counting the number of quarters in that inch. Okay, so for instance, what I have just highlighted here is the 4/4 scale. This produces a 1-inch board. Okay, so there is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, and the last bit, that is 1/8 of an inch. So you can see that the quarter scale just counts the number of quarters within that thickness of the board, plus it factors in a 1/8 of an inch for the kerf. So if you're not clear on what the quarter means, when you see 4/4, you know 4/4, 4/4. 4/4 equals 1 whole. 1 whole what? 1 whole inch. Okay, 5 quarters, you have 1 whole inch plus an additional quarter, so it is 1.25 inches. Okay, 6 quarter, I'm going to run out of space here. 6 quarter, let's try this. Sorry, it's going to get messy. Equals 6 quarters is 1 whole plus 2 additional quarters is 1.5 inches. And then finally, 8 quarters, well, you now have 4 quarters plus 4 quarters, right? Just count up the quarters. 4 and 4. Okay, and that equals 2 inches plus the kerf. So if we go back to our log, we used a regular tape measure to give us the width of the boards that we wanted. Then, in order to save a whole lot of math, so we don't have to worry about how much wood we are losing because of the kerf of the blade, we go to the quarter scale. And all we do is set our cutting blade down to the next line. And we predictably cut at each line, and that allows us to cut consistently 1-inch boards without having to worry about compensating for the kerf. Okay, so we finish, in this case, because we're using the 4-quarter scale, with 4-quarter boards each time. We could go to the 5-quarter scale, follow the line under the 5, and that would give us consistent 1.25 boards. We could go to 6-quarter, and it would give us consistently 1.5 boards by following the 6. Okay, we could go to the 8-quarter, and it would give us consistently 2-inch boards, not having to worry about the kerf and how much wood we'll lose from that each time. Okay, so that summarizes the use of the quarter scale. All it does is it allows us to predictably cut a designated thickness of board, and it factors in the kerf so that we don't have to add the loss of the kerf, the sawdust essentially, from our boards.